Alright, let's dive into this wild tale with a vibe like we're just chilling and chatting over some boba. Picture this, you're standing in a foggy graveyard in ancient China, the air thick with incense and some serious old school vibes. A young woman's rocking red wedding silk strutting toward, a coffin. Nope, this isn't a spooky movie intro, it's a legit ritual straight out of history, and it's weirder than your uncle's conspiracy theories. Welcome to the bizarre, kinda touching, and totally fascinating world of ghost marriages, where love, family, duty, and the afterlife get mashed up in a ceremony that makes swiping on Tinder look like child's play. So grab a snack, get comfy, and let's unpack this crazy story about marrying the dead in ancient China to keep the family line going, and how it stacks up against the inheritance rules we've got today. Now, before you start thinking this is some dark, creepy saga, let me set you straight. Our ancestors were just as obsessed with family and legacy as we are when we're fighting over who gets the best room at the family reunion. Except back then, instead of stressing over who inherits grandma's fancy teapot, they were out here throwing weddings for people who'd already pieced out of life. Why? To make sure the family name didn't fizzle out, the ancestors stayed chill in the afterlife, and everything stayed in cosmic balance. Because, let's be real, nothing screams family goals like a wedding where one of the lovebirds is, well, not exactly breathing. Let's paint the picture. Imagine ancient China where family wasn't just a big deal, it was your whole deal. Your lineage was like your ID, your social status, your Wi-Fi password all in one. If your family line died out, it wasn't just a bummer, it was like flipping off your ancestors who were probably already grumpy from chilling in the spirit world with no snacks. That's where ghost marriages come in, a tradition that hit its peak during the Han Dynasty, but hung around for ages. The deal was simple: if someone kicked the bucket young, single, and kid-free, especially a son who was supposed to keep the family name alive, they could get hitched after death to make sure their spirit wasn't wandering around lonely and salty. Here's the lowdown on how it went down. Say young Li Wei, a bright scholar with big dreams, bites the dust at 20, maybe a runaway ox cart or some sketchy rice wine did him in. His parents, heartbroken but practical AF, would start scouting for a bride for their late son. This could be another dead person, like a girl from the next village who also checked out early, or get this, sometimes a living person who was cool with marrying a corpse. Yeah, you heard me right. Living folks would sometimes tie the knot with the deceased, usually to lock in a family alliance or to take care of the dead person's ancestral shrine, the ceremony. Picture a legit wedding bash feast music, the works with a wooden effigy or tablet standing in for the missing spouse. The coffin was the VIP, decked out with offerings like it was ready to party. Now, you're probably thinking, bruh, that's a ton of effort for someone who's not even here to enjoy it. Fair point. But to ancient Chinese families, this was no joke. A single ghost was a cranky ghost, and cranky ghosts were bad vibes, like poltergeists with a grudge. By setting up a ghost marriage, families made sure their loved one's spirit was settled, paired up, and ready to vibe in the ancestral afterlife. Plus, it kept the family line going, at least symbolically, because the couple could adopt a male heir from the extended fam to carry on the name. It's like a spiritual hack for inheritance, no DNA test needed. Let's hit pause and compare this to our world today. We're still all about legacy, but we handle it differently. Instead of marrying corpses, we've got lawyers, wills, and trusts to make sure the family fortune, or at least that teapot, lands in the right hands. Modern inheritance laws are super straightforward. You die, your stuff goes to your kids, your spouse, or whoever you jotted down in your will. No kids. No sweat, it might go to your siblings' parents, or even that cousin you haven't talked to since that awkward Thanksgiving in 2003. It's all neat and legal, no coffins involved. But here's the tea, neat doesn't always mean drama-free. Modern inheritance fights can make ghost marriages look like a chill Sunday brunch. Ever seen siblings go at it over who gets mom's beach house on some reality TV show? Yeah, it's not exactly zen. So why were ghost marriages such a big deal back then? It's all about Confucianism, the OG philosophy that was like the rulebook for ancient Chinese life. Confucius was all about family duty, respecting your ancestors, and keeping the social order tighter than your skinny jeans after a buffet. If a son died without a wife or kids, it was like a glitch in the Matrix. The family had to fix it, even if it meant throwing a wedding with a wooden stand-in. Compare that to today, where we're more likely to sort out family drama with a shady group chat or a passive-aggressive email. Progress, maybe. But there's something kind of poetic about a society so ride or die for family that they'd throw a party for a coffin, right? Alright, so we've set the stage with ghost marriages in ancient China, where people were out here throwing weddings for the dead, like it was just another Tuesday. Now let's dig deeper into this wild tradition and figure out why it was such a big deal, plus how it compares to our modern obsession with keeping the family legacy alive without the creepy coffin vibes. Let's rewind to ancient China, where life wasn't exactly a walk in the park. We're talking about a time when you had to worry about everything from floods to famines to some random warlord deciding your village looked like a nice spot for a fight. In the middle of all that chaos, keeping the family line going was like the ultimate side quest. If a son died young without popping out an heir, it wasn't just a personal L, it was a full-on crisis for the whole family. That's where ghost marriages came in clutch. The goal was to make sure the deceased wasn't just chilling in the afterlife alone, but also to keep the family name from going extinct. Because in Confucian terms, letting your lineage die out was like forgetting to hit save on a 50-page Google Doc. So how did these ghost weddings actually go down? Picture a family pulling out all the stops. They'd find a match for their departed loved ones sometimes through a matchmaker who specialized in afterlife hookups. If the bride was also deceased, her family would agree to the union often because it brought some social clout or spiritual brownie points. The ceremony itself was no half-baked affair. Think red lanterns, fancy robes, and a banquet that could rival your cousin's over-the-top wedding. The dead person's spirit was represented by a tablet or effigy, and the families would exchange gifts just like a regular marriage. Sometimes they'd even bury the couple's remains together to seal the deal in the afterlife. Talk about commitment. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Ghost marriages could get messy, especially when money or status was involved. Some families would pay big bucks to secure a good match for their dead kid, kind of like bribing the bouncer to get into an exclusive club. And if a living person was involved, things got even weirder. Sometimes poor families would marry off a daughter to a dead guy for cash or social perks, like a ticket into a wealthier clan's ancestral rites. It's like signing up for a job you know you'll hate, but the benefits are too good to pass up. Except you know the job is being married to a ghost. Now let's talk about why this mattered so much. In ancient China, ancestors weren't just a cool story you told at family reunions, they were straight up spiritual VIPs. Families believed their ancestors were watching over them, and if you didn't keep them happy with offerings and a proper family line, they could make your life miserable from beyond the grave. Ghost marriages were like an insurance policy against pissed off spirits. Compare that to today, where we're more likely to stress about our credit score than our ancestors' feelings. Modern inheritance laws don't care about your ghost grandpa's mood. They're all about who gets the cash in the house. But just like back then, things can get messy. Ever heard of someone contesting a will because they got left out? It's like a ghost marriage level feud, just with more paperwork. Let's sprinkle in a little humor here. Imagine if our ancestors could see us now freaking out because Wi-Fi's down or we ran out of oat milk for our latte. They'd probably roll their eyes so hard they'd see the afterlife. Back then, they were out here dodging tigers and arranging ghost weddings while we're arguing over who gets dad's old golf clubs. But here's the thing, those ancient folks were onto something with their focus on family and legacy. Ghost marriages, as wild as they sound, were about keeping the clan tight and the ancestors happy. Today, we might not marry the dead, but we're still out here trying to make sure our name, or at least our Netflix account, lives on. So what's the long-term impact of all this ghost marriages didn't just keep spirits from throwing tantrums. They shaped how Chinese society thought about family and duty. The obsession with lineage pushed people to get creative, whether that meant adopting heirs or staging weddings for coffins. It's kind of like how we bend over backwards to keep our family traditions alive, even if it's just making sure everyone shows up for Thanksgiving. But here's a question for you. If you had to pull off a ghost marriage to keep your family's legacy going, would you do it, or would you just let your ancestors haunt you in peace? Drop your thoughts below. We're dying to hear them. Alright, we've been on quite the ride, haven't we? We've gone from ancient Chinese graveyards to full-on weddings with coffins as the main event. Now let's wrap our heads around how these ghost marriages tied into the bigger picture of keeping families together, and how that stacks up against the way we handle inheritance today. Spoiler, it's still messy, just with less incense and more lawyers. So let's recap real quick. Ghost marriages were ancient China's way of making sure no one dead or alive got left out of the family tree. If a son died young without a wife or kids, his folks would hook him up with a bride living or dead to keep his spirit chill and the family name alive. It was all rooted in this deep Confucian vibe of duty, respect, and keeping the ancestors from turning into grumpy ghosts. The ceremony was a big deal. Think fancy feasts, red silk, and a wooden stand-in for the dearly departed. It wasn't just about love or the lack thereof. It was about making sure the family's legacy didn't hit a dead end, pun intended. Now let's zoom out and look at why this was such a clutch move. In ancient China, your family line was like your brand. It had to keep going no matter what. If a son died without an heir, the family could adopt a male relative to carry on the name, but only if the dead guy was properly married in the afterlife. It's like setting up a spiritual trust fund to keep the lineage rolling. And it worked. Families stayed tight, ancestors stayed happy, and the social order didn't crumble. But it wasn't all perfect. Sometimes these marriages stirred up drama. Think greedy matchmakers or families fighting over who got to claim the prestige of a ghost wedding. Sounds familiar? Yeah, it's not that different from the family feuds we see today over who gets the lake house or dad's vintage car collection. Let's bring it to the present. Today we don't mess with ghost marriages unless you count that time you accidentally swiped right on a profile that hasn't been active since 2015. Instead, we've got inheritance laws that are supposed to keep things fair and square. You write a will, name your heirs, and boom, your stuff gets divvied up when you're gone. But let's be real, it's not always that simple. Families still bicker over who gets what, and don't even get me started on those surprise relatives who crawl out of the woodwork when there's money on the table. Modern laws are supposed to be cleaner than ancient rituals, but they can still feel like a soap opera. At least ghost marriages had a certain charm. Here's where it gets deep. Back then, ghost marriages were about more than just keeping the family name alive. They were about connection. Families believed that tying their dead to another soul living or not kept everyone linked from the living to the ancestors. It's kind of beautiful when you think about it. Today, we're more focused on the legal side of things, wills, trusts, probate, court, but we're still chasing that same sense of connection. We want to know our legacy, our story will live on, whether it's through our kids, our work, or even our old tweets. But here's a thought, are we really that different from our ancestors? They were out here marrying ghosts to keep the family tight. We're out here arguing over who gets the family cabin. Same energy, different execution. So what can we learn from this? Ghost marriages show us that humans have always been obsessed with legacy and belonging. Our ancestors faced crazy challenges, famines, wars, rogue spirits, and they came up with wild solutions like throwing weddings for coffins. Today our challenges are different. Think climate change, tech overload, or figuring out how to pay rent without selling a kidney, but the core is the same. We want to know our lives matter, that we're part of something bigger. Maybe we don't need to marry a ghost to prove it, but we could learn a thing or two about sticking together and keeping the bigger picture in mind. Here's something to chew on. If you were in ancient China, would you go all in on a ghost marriage to keep your family's legacy alive? Or would you just let your ancestors deal with their own drama? Think about it. What's your legacy worth to you? Alright friends, we've been on one heck of a journey, haven't we? From creepy yet oddly sweet ghost marriages in ancient China to the modern day drama of wills and inheritance fights, we've covered some serious ground. Let's wrap this up with a quick look back, some food for thought, and a nudge to keep the convo going. So here's the deal in a nutshell. Back in ancient China, ghost marriages were the ultimate power move to keep the family line going strong. If a son died young, his family would hook him up with a bride, dead or alive, to make sure his spirit wasn't wandering the afterlife all lonely and mad. It was all about keeping the ancestors happy, the family name alive, and the cosmic vibes in check. These weddings were legit, with feasts, music, and a coffin as the star of the show. It was wild, sure, but it was also about love duty and making sure the family stayed connected even across the divide between life and death. Now let's bring it home. Those ancient folks were dealing with some intense stuff, floods, famines, you name it, but they still found a way to keep their legacy intact. Today we've swapped coffins for courtrooms, but we're still wrestling with the same big questions. How do we make sure our family's story lives on? How do we keep the people we love connected even when life gets messy? Whether it's a ghost marriage or a will, it's all about leaving something behind that says, yo, I was here and I mattered. Here's a little something to ponder. Are we really that far off from our ancestors? They were out here staging weddings for the dead to keep the family tight. We're stressing over who gets the house or how to split the family business. Maybe we've traded incense for legal jargon, but deep down, we're still chasing that sense of belonging and legacy. So what's your take? If you had to face the kind of challenges our ancestors did, no Wi-Fi, no delivery apps, just you and a coffin, how would you keep your family's story alive? And what's the modern equivalent for you writing a will, starting a family tradition, or maybe just making sure your Spotify playlists don't die with you? Here's the big takeaway: ghost marriages teach us that humans are built to adapt, connect, and keep the story going no matter what. Our ancestors faced insane odds and came up with solutions that sound bonkers to us, but they worked. Today, we've got our own challenges, global warming, tech addiction, you name it, but we've also got the same grit and creativity to figure it out. So let's take a page from their book, Stick Together, think big, and maybe don't sweat the small stuff, like who gets the teapot. Alright, here's where you come in. Drop a comment below and let me know, what did you think of this wild ghost marriage tradition? Would you have been down to throw a wedding for a coffin, or would you just let your ancestors haunt you in peace? And while you're at it, give this video a like if you enjoyed the ride and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more crazy history stories. Oh, and if you're craving another deep dive into the past, check out our video on the weirdest rituals in history next. It's got more bizarre vibes you won't want to miss. Thanks for hanging out with me today, you absolute legends. Have an awesome day, and I'll catch you in the next one.